The drama surrounding Shedeur Sanders had been simmering for months, but when it finally erupted, it did so in a way nobody saw coming. There had been rumors, whispers, offhand comments tossed across debate desks, but nothing prepared anyone for the moment Shedeur directly confronted Rex Ryan on national television. It was live, unfiltered, impossible to walk back, and the fallout was immediate. One of the NFL's most polarizing young quarterbacks had finally reached a point where he refused to let someone else control the narrative about him. And for the first time, the public saw the frustration behind the polished answers, the exhaustion behind a poised smile, and the fire behind the calm exterior he shows in press conferences. What unfolded wasn't just a disagreement. It was a boiling point. The inevitable explosion that happens when players have been pushed, questioned, doubted, and blamed beyond what any fair evaluation should allow. The truth is that this moment didn't begin on that ESPN Skype interview. It began long before, in meeting rooms where Shedeur wasn't given first-team reps, in practice weeks where the game plan wasn't built around him, in chaotic circumstances where he was expected to perform flawlessly despite having no preparation. It began in Baltimore, where he was thrown into a game midstream, having taken exactly 0 reps with the starters, surrounded by players who didn't even know his cadence. It began in a franchise that, for 27 straight years, has failed to develop a young quarterback into a long-term starter, a franchise where promising players arrive with hope and leave with questions. All those decisions, all that dysfunction, all that pressure, it built up quietly until the moment Rex Ryan opened his mouth and pushed one narrative too many. When Shedeur appeared on the screen for what was supposed to be a routine pregame discussion, the panel expected the usual polite energy players give before a big moment. He tried at first. But as soon as Rex Ryan took another shot at him, another swipe at his readiness, another dismissal of the circumstances he was thrown into, the energy shifted. Shedeur didn't smile his way through it. He didn't nod and swallow the criticism. He pushed back, and it was the first time the world saw, without a filter, how tired he was of carrying responsibility for failures that weren't his. To understand how the conversation ignited into something unforgettable, you have to understand what's at stake for Shedeur this weekend. For the first time since he entered the NFL, he's getting a real start, not a desperation substitution, not a mid-game scramble where he's told to improvise without preparation. This time, he has a full week of first-team reps, a game plan built for him, and coaches actually tailoring the offense to his strengths. This is the chance he should have had months ago, and it's happening against the Las Vegas Raiders, one of the worst teams in the league, an opportunity that could shape his entire NFL future. If he plays well, the door swings open. If he struggles, the narrative that Rex Ryan has spent months constructing will be cemented in front of millions. So the stakes were already high before anyone logged into that interview. And that's exactly why the tension snapped the moment a sympathetic analyst dared to say out loud what so many were thinking. The analyst, calm, composed, direct, stared straight into the camera and said he didn't believe Shedeur had been put in a position to succeed. Not in Baltimore. Not at any point this season. He described the Cleveland Browns as a house divided, a team being pulled in multiple directions by a head coach, offensive coordinator, general manager, and owner who all seemed to be operating from different agendas. He said he didn't know what the hell was going on in Cleveland, but he knew one thing. The organization was not collectively doing everything it could to ensure its rookie quarterback succeeded. And then he turned directly toward Rex Ryan, acknowledged their opposing viewpoints, and delivered a line that instantly became a social media earthquake. Respectfully, I don't give a damn. That was the spark. Screenshots spread before the segment had even finished. The studio froze. Rex Ryan's expression changed immediately. Everyone could feel the atmosphere shift from an analysis segment to something closer to a confrontation. The analyst didn't stop there. He added that there was no way you could send a quarterback onto an NFL field looking so unprepared. No cadence work, no reps with the starters, no communication with the offensive line. And that he didn't think it was an accident. That allegation was nuclear. He wasn't just calling out coaching mistakes. He was implying something deeper, darker, more intentional. And Rex tried, briefly, instinctively, to shut it down. But no amount of bluster could erase the facts. Offensive linemen had already admitted publicly that they didn't know Shedeur's cadence. The team had confirmed he'd been given almost no preparation, and Shedeur himself had been open about the chaos surrounding his unexpected debut. So when Rex attempted to pivot, to drag the conversation back toward his familiar talking points about readiness and maturity, the other analysts pushed back harder. It was a rare sight. An entire panel refusing to let Rex dominate the conversation, refusing to let the narrative shift away from Cleveland's failures and back onto the untested quarterback who was thrown into the fire without protection. What made this moment so electric wasn't just the tension. It was the truth spilling out on live television. For decades, the Browns have cycled through quarterbacks at a pace unheard of in modern football. Since 1999, the team is 0-17 in their quarterback's first starts, not 0-17 in playoff games, 0-17 in first starts. No other franchise in the league has a stat even remotely like that. It's not a curse. It's not bad luck. It's structural failure. Coaching changes, scheme instability, questionable front office decisions, and a cultural inability to build around young talent. Yet somehow, every time a rookie quarterback struggles, the blame goes straight to the player instead of the system swallowing him whole. That's the environment Shedeur walked into. And that's the environment Rex Ryan refused to acknowledge, choosing instead to hammer the same narrative again and again. Shedeur isn't ready. Shedeur isn't that guy. Shedeur needs to prove he belongs. But when you ignore context long enough, eventually someone is going to call you out on it. And that's exactly what happened. Another analyst tried to introduce balance, praising Shedeur's toughness, his arm talent, his resilience. He pointed out that Shedeur has grown up in a spotlight brighter than most athletes ever experienced, followed, filmed, analyzed since 8th grade. He highlighted the composure Shedeur shows after taking hits, the way he bounces up unfazed. He framed Sunday's game not as a test of whether Shedeur is talented, but whether the Browns can finally do something they failed to do for nearly 3 decades, support a young quarterback properly. But Rex couldn't help himself. Even after that measured, nuanced assessment, he circled back to doubt, to skepticism, to the idea that maybe Shedeur wasn't built for this. And that's when the temperature in the conversation began to rise. Because what the public rarely sees is the toll that narrative warfare takes on a player who knows he's being misrepresented. The tension grew even more intense when the discussion turned to Shedeur Sanders. Earlier that week, Deion had opened up in a rare moment of vulnerability, explaining his inner conflict about attending Shedeur's debut as a starter. His presence, he said, meant attention, cameras, headlines, distractions that could shift focus away from Shedeur. As a father, he wanted to be there, to give his son that grounding moment before walking onto the biggest stage of his life. But as a public figure, he knew how easily the meaning of that presence could be twisted. The panel understood that. They empathized, except for Rex. Instead of acknowledging the impossible position Deion found himself in, he used it as another opportunity to criticize, another chance to suggest that Deion's involvement was somehow harmful, another way to shift blame toward the Sanders family. And this time, it wasn't just one analyst who pushed back. Multiple people stepped in to defend Deion, pointing out how reserved he'd been, how careful he'd been to avoid being a distraction, how he kept his distance specifically to protect his son. They acknowledged the truth that Rex refused to see. Shedeur Sanders hasn't caused chaos in Cleveland. Cleveland caused chaos in Cleveland. The conversation only got more heated as Shedeur himself pushed back at various points during the interview. He didn't raise his voice or get emotional. He simply told the truth. He defended his preparation, explained his confidence, and stated plainly that he knows he's the guy. It wasn't arrogance. It wasn't delusion. It was a self-belief every great quarterback needs. But that confidence seemed to irritate Rex even more. It was as if Shedeur refusing to shrink, refusing to apologize for his belief in himself, was a personal affront. One of the most powerful revelations came when a panelist described Shedeur's mental fortitude, referencing the night thieves broke into his home and stole over $200,000 worth of property. It happened on the same night. He was fighting for a comeback against Baltimore. And yet Shedeur stayed focused on football. He didn't complain. He didn't lash out. He didn't fall apart under the weight of competing crises. That kind of resilience cannot be taught, and it cannot be dismissed by someone sitting comfortably in a studio chair pointing fingers. As the interview went on, another analyst highlighted the simple truth. Shedeur looked unprepared at his first NFL appearance because he was unprepared, because the Browns did not prepare him. When a quarterback is naturally gifted, as Shedeur appears lost, the question shouldn't be whether he belongs in the league. The question should be what forces allowed that situation to happen. And when you realize he had never practiced his cadence of the line, never received first-team reps, never had a game plan built for him, the answer becomes clear. This wasn't incompetence alone. This was organizational mismanagement on a scale too large to ignore. And when someone finally said on live television that they didn't think it was an accident, the truth felt like a hammer dropping. By the time the segment wrapped, the tension still hummed in the air. Rex Ryan didn't back down, but neither did Shedeur, and neither did the analyst who'd had enough of seeing a young quarterback blamed for failures he had no control over. The battle lines were officially drawn. And now, Sunday's game in Las Vegas isn't just a matchup. It's a referendum. Whatever Shedeur does on that field will be weaponized by both sides. If he thrives, his supporters will say he just needed a real chance. If he struggles, critics like Rex will claim they were right all along, conveniently ignoring the chaos and sabotage hinted at throughout the season. But Shedeur isn't walking into that stadium timid or uncertain. He's walking in with conviction, with preparation, and with belief in himself that was forged long before he ever put on a Browns uniform. He has finally been given a game plan tailored to his strengths. Quick reads, rollout designs, timing routes that match his natural pace. He finally has a week of real reps, real structure, real support. And he's stepping onto that field not as a backup scrambling to survive, but as a starter determined to prove that everything said about him was wrong. He summed it up perfectly this week. I know I'm the guy. And he meant it. So now the world waits. After the heated confrontation with Rex Ryan, after the accusations of organizational failure, after the boiling point reached in front of millions, Sunday's game has become something far bigger than football. It's a moment of truth, a turning point, a chance for Shedeur Sanders to redefine his narrative once and for all, not by arguing with analysts, not by defending himself in interviews, but by doing the one thing he's been waiting for all season, playing the game his way. And when that ball is kicked off in Las Vegas, the entire football world will be watching to see who was right, the believers or the doubters, the analysts accusing Cleveland of systemic failure, or the critics insisting the blame lies with the quarterback. One game won't define Shedeur's career, but it will rewrite the conversation. And after the firestorm that erupted on live television, one thing is certain. This story is about to get very, very interesting. If you enjoyed this breakdown and want more dramatic deep dives into the biggest stories shaking the sports world, make sure you hit like, subscribe, and drop your thoughts in the comments. Was Shedeur right to confront Rex Ryan? Is Cleveland sabotaging their own quarterback? And who do you think will be proven right on Sunday? Let's talk about it.